Just a good evening to everybody. We're just waiting for participants to start joining, so I'll wait for the numbers to start creeping up. Just to let you know that there's a question and answer facility for any questions you have for us as we go through the presentation. We'll come to some of those live at the end, but some of them will be answered as we go through. The chat option is there if you're having technical issues. If you can't hear something or there are other issues that you need us to attend to, we can address those through there. The session is being recorded. It will go up on the website after the event, so you can go back and watch to see if if there's anything you missed and want to go and pick up on that. So just waiting for a few more to come through. I think we're nearly up to the point where we're going to start. Okay, there's a few more people joining, but we'll get started so we can get through everything. Just a very warm welcome to everyone who's joining this evening's session. My name is Emma Prince. I'm the Head of Learning at Worthing College. I manage English amongst many other subjects, and one of those is science, actually. I'm going to give you an overview of the subject area and then hand over to my colleagues. We've got Sarah, Dee and Julie from Worthing this evening, and Alice and Claire from Haywards Heath. You're here because you're interested in studying English in whatever form you choose, perhaps two separate areas of literature and language if English is what really makes you tick, but you might be looking at studying the sciences and wondering if this is a potential third subject. If that's you, then it definitely is a valuable third subject for you. You might not be aware that some medical degrees offer the option of a fast-track English-based degree because they know how much of an impact those skills have on a career in medicine. So if you have friends who aren't attending this evening but are in a similar position and are thinking about English as a possibility, it's worth letting them know too. Can we move on to the next slide, please? I'm going to give you an introduction to the English courses we offer. I'm going to be ably assisted by some quotations on the screen here. If we can move on to the next one. You'll see there's a common theme amongst the quotations that you're seeing on the screen in front of you about how emotions are expressed through language, whether that's in the form of a play, a poem, a novel or an article. And the next slide, please. And studying English gives you an emotional connection with others' thoughts and actions through the written word. Next slide, please. And the next one. Thank you. Just going to talk about which course might be the right one for you. We offer all three English A-level options at both Worthing and Haywards Heath, and my colleagues will explain the details for each so you'll be able to see the key differences. Before I hand over, I will say that studying any of these options at A-level will be a very different experience from GCSE. A student who studied Lang Lit with us last year said that GCSE was about learning how to answer the questions for the exam, about the process of the exams, but the A-level encourages you to think for yourself and question what you're reading so you can arrive at your own conclusions. I'm now going to hand over to Julie, who will tell you all about literature.
Right, so next slide, I think. Hi, so I'm Julia and I teach literature at Worthing College. The course ranges across time and across genre. It focuses on a range of plays and novels and poetry. So there's actually something for everyone, whatever your particular interest is. It's split into three papers: drama, poetry and prose. And then also there's a coursework element, which we'll talk about a bit later. What you can see on the screen at the moment are the drama texts. Both Haywards Heath and Worthing study A Streetcar Named Desire. If you come to Worthing, you'll then continue in year 2 to study Othello, and at Haywards Heath, it's Hamlet. We move on to the next one. You'll see that the sort of images here, a range of texts, also prose texts here. You'll develop with all the texts, you'll develop your critical skills, your reading skills, your ability to analyze. And you'll also look at what influenced the writers in their time. So context is important, and also looking at critics and what other people think of the texts that you're looking at. I think these sorts of things, looking at context and critics, are some of the key differences between A-level and GCSE. So I'll hand over to Claire at Haywards Heath for a little bit more information on that.
Thank you, Julie. So the prose unit, as you can see, we've got Kazuo Ishiguro's Never Let Me Go and Mary Shelley's Frankenstein. So the theme for this unit is science and society. And you compare the novels in the exam, and we really think about issues such as morality and as science advances, whether just because human beings can do certain things, whether they actually should. So you compare those texts, and that is the prose exam. So the third exam that you take for English literature, if we can just move on to the next slide, please. So the third unit is poetry. So we look at an anthology of poetry from 2001 to 2010. And these poems explore a diverse range of themes such as family and relationships, masculinity and femininity, childhood and aging, violence and cruelty, mental health and mental illness, prejudice and fear of outsiders, and many more things. So it's quite an exciting, quite a current anthology of poetry to discuss and to analyse. The other part of that question will be you'll get a poem that you haven't seen before and you'll compare it to one from that anthology. Also, as part of your study of poetry, you'll be, if you apply to Worthing College, you'll be studying the Romantic poets, so poets such as Shelley, Keats, Byron and Wordsworth. And if you apply to Hayward Heath College, you'd be studying Victorian poets with Elizabeth Barrett Browning, Hardy, the Brontes, Tennyson and Rossetti. And by studying a poetic movement, you really get a good sense of how poetry reflects the time it's written in. We'll be looking for themes and patterns and making lots of links between the poems. And one key thing with literature is we really do focus on historical context and think about the lives of the poets as well and how they influenced the poetry that we study. Okay, so just moving back to Julie again. So Julie's just going to talk to you a little bit about the coursework on the literature course.
Thank you. So your drama, poetry and prose papers are 80% of the course and they're exams. And then you have 20%, which is coursework or non-assessed, the non-assessed element. This is probably the most exciting part of the course, really, because this is where you get to choose your own interests, follow your own interests. So it's a comparative study, it's 2 texts, any genre, any combination of genres. It could be an interest that you have in, I don't know, science fiction or Gothic novels. It could be something to do with a particular author that you're interested in. But the main thing is that what you do is you choose your texts and then you do a substantial piece of work on comparing those 2 texts in terms of how they're written, as well as the sort of context, the historical context, and also, again, what other people have said about them. It really is a wide open choice, and it comes towards the end of the course so that you've had lots of time to develop your skills in terms of analysis and your reading of literature texts. It's worth noting also that the lessons that you take at A-level may differ from GCSE in terms of we don't sit in the room and read the books together. You do a lot of your reading at home, a lot of the preparation at home, so that you come into the classroom ready to discuss, to debate, to take notes, to learn from each other, to share ideas with each other. So that's quite a different way of approaching literature, I think, probably from what you may be used to. But I think that's covered all the elements of the course for now. Happy to answer any questions. In the meantime, we'll pass over to Alice, who will be talking to you about the combined language literature exam.
Thank you, Julie. Hi, my name's Alice and I teach the language and literature combined A-level at Haywards Heath. Excuse my voice, I'm losing it. The first thing I'm going to do is to dispel some myths around the combined course. Some people worry that it isn't seen as having such a high value as the two separate A-levels, but that's really not the case at all. And lots of Russell Group universities see it as just as valuable because of the skills it helps you to develop. Whether you're studying at Worthing or Haywards Heath, the first year will focus on paper 1 and the second year will focus on paper 2. I'm going to tell you a bit about paper 1 this evening, and my colleague Sarah from Worthing will tell you about paper 2 and the non-examined assessment. So in September, we start with the Paris Anthology, which is a collection of non-literary texts. So these could be conversations, they could be memoirs, blogs, chat forums, travel guides, to name just a few. And these all have a focus on Paris in some form or another. We will also introduce you to a whole range of linguistic and literary terms, which you can then apply to the key texts. Some of these might be familiar to you already, but most of them will be new. And it's a case of learning them so that you can develop your confidence in applying them. We'll step up the process so you slowly build up to writing full essays using the textual analysis skills you have developed. And these will sort of give you the tools to really be able to explore the texts that we look at very closely and to deconstruct them really precisely. Once we finish with Paris, we'll move on to The Handmaid's Tale in October. You may have seen the recent TV series, or a couple of years ago it was on, which is a sort of terrifyingly plausible novel which was written by Margaret Atwood in 1985. This has dystopian conventions, and we'll look at these and link them to characters, themes and settings. After that, we'll move on to the Carol Ann Duffy poetry. This is a collection of 14 poems, and we'll look at these in pairs connected to different themes. Some of these themes are relationships, so they can be parent-child relationships or romantic relationships, identity, memories, just to name a few of the themes that we'll be looking at. Throughout the course, you'll be assessed through essays, as this is a requirement of the exams at the end of the course. We'll give you lots of support with this, as the essay styles will differ from GCSE. But we also do lots of posters, presentations throughout the year as well to make things more interesting. The lessons at the start will focus on investigating new theories, and then we'll be applying them to a range of texts. There will be a lot of group and paired work, even in a post-COVID climate. We have ways of doing this. There's lots of technology available that enables us to get students working with different students in the room. And these will lead to whole class feedback where you'll be able to hear each other's ideas as well. There'll be lots of discussion and debate. You'll be encouraged to question the text and develop new ways of looking at things. So it's a really sort of interesting and varied course in your first year. And now I'm going to hand over to my colleague Sarah from Worthing, who will tell you a bit about what you'll study during your second year with us.
Thanks, Alice. In the second year, we focus on paper 2. And this exam paper only has 2 texts. And the first text we study is a play. At Worthing, we study All My Sons by Arthur Miller. And I believe I was quickly talking to Alice earlier, and she's thinking that she'll probably do All My Sons as well. Or if not, it might be A Streetcar Named Desire by Tennessee Williams. The focus of this exam question is how conflict is expressed on stage through dramatic techniques and through the language methods the author has used. So that's the first question that we actually study for paper 2. The other part of paper 2 is a very different kind of task to what the rest of the questions have been. It's not your normal essay response to a question. The task has an element of creative writing to it, as you have to recast and extract from the base text, which is a text called Into the Wild, which we are going to study both at Haywards Heath and Worthing College. And you have to recast it into an additional scene which could be found in the text. Now, Into the Wild is a non-fiction text which recounts the journey of an American teenager called Alex, who he made into the Alaskan wilderness and the devastating consequences of his actions. And it's actually all real true life events as well. Some of you might be familiar with the film that was made a few years ago as well on it. We study the text and we focus on the writing style of the author and how he creates the personalities and speech of the people he interviews as he retraces Alex's journey. You would then have to use your knowledge of these writing styles and characters in order to create a new scene. And once you've then done that, you do the second part of the question, which is where you have to write a commentary explaining why you have made the stylistic choices you have in the recast. Now, some people like this exam question as it provides an element of creativity to the course. However, some people sometimes find that quite daunting as well. But please don't be put off by it, as this can be a guided task which can be rooted in the style of Into the Wild if you don't feel comfortable with creative writing, or you can then take it to wherever you want to and develop it into something more creative if your confidence is there to do that. We provide lots of guided writing tasks and give you many exemplars on how to produce an answer and personalised feedback on your own recasts for this element of paper 1. So you'll be well supported whether you love creative writing or not. Okay, if we could move on to the next slide, please. And the final part of our course is the coursework element, the NEA, the non-exam assessment. So unlike your GCSE courses, you have a coursework element to your A-level. And for us, it's the language investigation where you compare a literary and non-literary text on a theme of your choice. For example, there is such a wide range of things that you can do. Some previous ones that students have done is the representation of strong women in The Colour Purple and Beyonce song lyrics, or an investigation into the language of children in the novel Room, and a transcript of The Secret Life of 4-Year-Olds, or the representation of obsession in Alita and song lyrics by Tyler, the Creator. So there is a really diverse range of texts that you could be looking at and themes that you could be looking at as well. It gives you a great deal of freedom in making your NEA text decisions, and we will be there to guide you through each of those steps, giving you exemplar pairings, inspirations, and having one-to-one meetings with each of you to help you hone your choices and your NEA titles. You'll make your NEA text decisions at the end of your first year, but you will not start writing your coursework until we return in the second year, where you'll have the opportunity to submit a draft and receive feedback before the final submission date. And that's basically our course for you. So I'll now hand over to Dee, who will be talking about the English language A-level.
Yes, hello, good evening. My name is Dee, and I'm one of the teachers of English language at Worthing College. Now, you've heard about the other two A-levels already. So you know that literature is wholly focused on fiction. Langlit is a combination of fiction and non-fiction. And now I can tell you that English language is based on non-fiction texts. So we look at adverts and autobiographies, podcasts, political speeches, and practically everything in between as well. If we look at the first year of the course, our first lessons focus on context and identity. So we look at personal identity, social identity, and how we present ourselves through our language in different scenarios. Initially, we'll be looking at a range of identities and contexts. And this all feeds into the first exam, where you'll be asked to compare how two identities present themselves or are presented. Like Langlit, there is quite a lot of terminology to learn, and this will need an ongoing glossary. A lot of this will be really different from GCSE. It's a completely new course and bears, quite frankly, no relation to GCSE at all. The majority of focus on language over time is at the start of the second year, but we'll feed ideas in through the first year by looking at word origins, historical influences on language over different time periods as well. Next slide, please. Thank you. Child language is a really interesting part of the course as well, and this runs across both the first and the second year. So you'll be able to consolidate your knowledge as you go. We look at how children learn to speak, read and write, which also involves looking at different theoretical perspectives. There's quite a scientific feel to this part of the course, as you look at the mechanics of how sounds are actually made and formed by children. And you also study theories that are covered in psychology and sociology. So if you are wondering how English language would fit in these areas, it's one area that has really close links. We also have a nursery on site at Worthing College, and we work with them to arrange visits, and sometimes the staff have brought children into the classes as well, or they read to them in the learning zones so we can see some of those theories in action as well. we will be able to collaborate on this between the two sites. So if you're studying at Haywards Heath, you won't miss out. The study leads to paper 2, where you'll be asked to analyze either speech or writing. So we never know what's coming up. It could be either of those two. Next slide, please. Thank you. The third main part of the course is studied in the second year, and materials for this aren't released until Christmas. But in a nutshell, you'll be given a choice of 3 areas to study. So you look at either language and power, language and gender, or language and journalism. Now, the exam board will give you a key area to focus on, and then you've got freedom to investigate in a way that might interest you. So even if you choose the same topic as somebody else in the class, it's very unlikely you both take the same route. You'll end up with very different conclusions. And next slide, please. Thank you. The last item of non-examined assessment is the NEA, the coursework. This will start in the summer term of the first year at Worthing, so it's a little way off yet. But essentially, you will be producing a folder of writing, which can be narrative-based, which is of course perfect if you're already into writing on a keen story writer. If writing creatively is not necessarily your thing, you can also write speeches, you can do blogs, articles, travel writing. So there's quite a scope there. And essentially, you will need to write 2 different pieces of writing from whichever genre you choose, but they need to be differentiated by either purpose or audience. And one tends to be easier to write, whereas the other one is designed to stretch you and take you out of your comfort zone. Once you've got the writing drafted, you'll need to write a commentary as well, which is where you will be using your own analytical skills in your own work. This is where the challenge comes in as well, but you'll be very well supported, and we'll have some excellent examples to look at too. And thank you very much. I'll be handing back to Emma.
Thanks, Dee. If we can, thank you. Next slide. I think the best question, or the best answer to this question actually is, where can't they take you? Because the English A-levels open up so many doors. If you're heading to university, you'll be able to apply your analytical and essay writing skills to a wide range of courses. The critical thinking you develop on these courses will help you to question everything and will lead you down thought paths you hadn't previously considered. I was talking to a parent recently about her daughter. She's actually doing Lang Lit with us, and she said, "What have you done to my daughter? She questions and she argues about everything now." But that's what we want. We want you to be able to do that and feel passionately about the things that are going on around you through the skills that you develop on these courses. If you're heading to the world of work, you're not thinking of going to university, the skills serve you equally as well. Especially if your ultimate aim is to run your own business, is effective communication in both written and verbal forms will definitely take you a long way and could set you above, other people in your field as well. So it can make you more competitive. Next slide, please. Just a little bit about enrichment. Obviously, in the current climate, enrichment has been put on hold at the moment, and especially after the announcement at the weekend, we were hoping to better get some things started sort of after half term, but we may have to wait for that. We have run trips to theatres, whether that's local or up in London. We've set up connections with Worthing theatres to provide enrichment opportunities for our students as well. If we can't get to the theatre physically or other venues that are linked to the A-levels, we will be looking at online events and virtual visits and guest speakers coming in and doing things virtually. So it won't be a question of missing out. And we're also looking to develop ideas a bit further around the whole English subject area, things like Lit Fest and news events. So those are the things we're working on for the future, and you'll definitely be the first to know when we do get these established. So it is a bit on hold at the moment, but we'll be doing it in other ways, as other people have said this evening already. There are other means of doing these things. If we go to the next couple of slides, please. So the next one. Okay, I'm not going to read this out to you. Sorry, can we flip back to the one before? Thank you. I'm not going to read all this out to you, but these are some thoughts from staff and students at Worthing College and across the CCG group. One aspect that resonates with me on this one is where she says something that also makes me reflect on the importance of authenticity and breaking down barriers by speaking the truth, because that's exactly what is done by the authors that you'll be studying and the text that you'll be studying on any of these courses. And the next slide is Beth, who was one of students here at Worthing College. She studied English language and literature, so she was taught by me and Julie as well. And she just sums up the support you'll get from teachers both at Worthing and Haywards Heath, and what she got out of the course. So I just thought it was important to share that with you as well. On to the next slide, please. These are some of the frequently asked questions we've had from open events in the past. Other questions that we've had tend to revolve around the text that is studied. So I think you've got all the answers from everybody talking to you this evening about that. We will be coming to some of the questions to answer them live. Some of them have been answered as we're going through, but we'll pick some of the other ones up that are still remaining to be answered. In the meantime, if we can go on to the next slide, there's a flow chart, which is what we normally use here at Worthing College when we're doing an open event, and it's the questions that we ask you to determine which course is right for you. So it's worth just having a look at some of those and seeing which questions you're answering and where that takes you, because then you've got a good idea of which course is the right one for you. I just want to say thank you for the team for their contributions this evening. A huge thank you to everyone for joining us to find out about our English courses. There will be an FAQ document being produced from this evening, so any of the questions that you've posted, we'll pick up on those and send out a document on the website later on. I'm just going to leave you on the next slide with the contact details while we come back to your questions, and I'll go to the Q&A session now. I'm not going to answer them all. I'm going to hand over to the rest of the team. So if everybody wants to have a quick look and see which questions you want to answer. The first one I've picked up, I think Alice possibly wanted to answer this live. I'm not sure. Can I study literature and language as separate courses, or do I have to do the combined?
Yeah, that was just my technical ineptitude, actually. But, well, hopefully that's been answered now. So we run the 3 courses as the combined course, but then we also offer the separate one. So I would hope that after seeing the presentation, that would be clear now. I hope that's answered.
Yeah, there's absolutely nothing to stop anybody taking the 2 separate ones if you know English is what really makes you tick, as I said at the beginning, and you definitely want to do those 2 courses. There's nothing stopping you at all. You can do both of them. Does anybody else want to pick up on any of the questions there?
Yeah, can I just add something about that question as well? Because obviously it's great if you wanted to do both, but if you were thinking you've got other courses that you want to do, other subjects, then the combined Lang Lit is really good, because it gives you the freedom to be able to do more than just one course, that have other options for your other A-level choices. And also the other thing that we very often say to students when we see them face to face in these situations is, you might love reading, but you have to decide how much you love reading, because with literature, there's a lot more reading that you need to do than with the Lang Lit. So you have to be really honest with yourself about how much reading you will do outside of class, and whether you want to look at some of the classics, which are great, but if you're not someone who loves, Julie, if you're not someone who loves the classics, if you like the modern stuff, which is like me, then the Lang Lit course might be something that is a little bit more for you. And if you're doing a lot of other courses which are very essay based with a lot of reading, then Lang Lit might be the right fit for you if you're having to think about how much time you were spending doing other courses as well. So food for thought.
Thanks, Sarah. I'll quickly answer the one about the exam board. So for the separate language and literature courses, they're both Pearson Edexcel, and for the Lang Lit combined, it's AQA. So those are the exam boards that we follow. There's a question about whether, if you're doing the combined, will you still be able to observe the nursery? Sarah?
It's slightly different with the combined course, because the only time you would only need to go and observe in the nursery is if you chose to do a piece of coursework on child language acquisition. And I suppose that could be something we could arrange if need be, but very often for the non-literary text, where we would say you need to go, and if you wanted to get a transcript of children speaking, that's something that we would say you need to go off and do. And that could be that you are recording a little niece or nephew that you have having a conversation, or you might look at a transcript from something like The Secret Life of 4-year-olds, or it could be that you could go and observe in the nursery, but it might be a little bit more difficult because you have to record it and then you have to transcribe it for the coursework. So I don't know how that would work logistically for legal reasons and everything. So that would be something we'd have to investigate.
Okay, thank you. Dee, do you want to pick up on the one about the exams for English language?
Yes, I can. So essentially, the longest exam is paper 1, which is 2 hours and 15 minutes long. And it's in 2 parts, which is why you need a bit extra time there. The child language one used to be an hour, and now they've extended it for 1 hour and 15 minutes, which is a lot easier. Well, you will need that time. Then you've got paper 3, which lasts 1 hour and 45 minutes. And obviously the coursework hasn't got an exam, so there's no limit. You tend to have the chance to do 2 different drafts, and if need be, a third. And the submission is usually in May of year 2. And that's it.
And the coursework is worth 20% of the course, isn't it? And 80% for exams. There's one question there about, can you do English Lit Lang and English Lit? So no, you can't do the combined and one of the separate ones, because there would be too much crossover. So it's either the 2 separate ones or the combined one. Who would like to pick up on that? For a career in medicine, which course would be the most beneficial? I would say any of them, actually. I don't think any of them would hold you back. It depends what area of medicine you're going into. If you are sort of particularly looking at sort of children's medicine, or kind of going into maybe the speech therapy area, then obviously the language one lends itself more to that. But any of them are valued. And as I said at the beginning, there is a sort of fast track English degree course that is offered to medical students, and they pick up on that and just do that in a year, because they know that it really benefits them in terms of what they're doing on the medicine course. So any of them would be the answer to that one.
Can I add something there about the literature? I mean, all of them, but you know, as I teach literature, I'd say the literature one is not just about the actual text, but it's about you're developing your ability to think critically and to think independently and to work independently and to decipher things and read between the lines and all that sort of thing. And I think all those skills are as relevant for any walk of life, really, including, you know, medical one. So that would be my my plug for literature, anyway. Thank
you, Julie. Never missed an opportunity to plug literature. I think we've come to the end of the questions now. There's nothing else coming up on the screen at the moment. Some of them have been answered live, but as I say, we'll put together an FAQ document from those to make sure that you get all the answers to the questions that were posed during the evening. So it just remains for me to thank you for attending the virtual event this evening. If you've got any further questions, obviously you can post those on the website. I think there's a facility on there where you can post some questions there as well. So thank you for joining us. It's been lovely having you in a very different way this evening, but hopefully you've got everything you wanted out this evening. Thank you very much.